Welcome back, everybody, to Calcio Culture. This is Vos here, joined by Mats. Today, we're talking Champions League Serie A match week number 7, really approaching that pivotal match day number 10 we mentioned last week. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to start off by handing it over to Mats here to lead off the quick shouts.
Ciao, paisanos. I'm doing well, Vos. Thank you for asking. You really want to jump into it, getting super excited for this episode. But as always, like Vos says, we are starting off with our quick shouts. No Logs here also, by the way. RIP. Well, not RIP, but he's just decided he's a 1 week guy type of guy until for the foreseeable future.
He's a Conte guy. One game a week.
He is a Conte guy. That's a good shout right there. And so because he's not here, I wanted to do a quick shout in honor of him. He is a Ronaldo fan. I don't know why, but Ronaldo, this broke like a week ago or so it probably should have been on Monday, but oh well, we're covering it now. Ronaldo has officially scored more goals in his 20s than in his 30s. I believe he scored like 450 in his 20s and 451-ish now in his 30s, which is just pretty crazy, his longevity, and he does score a lot of goals.
Was he in Juve over 30, right? Because that was like a pretty crazy run for him. He
was.
You look back, he actually scored 1 million goals. He scored like over 100 goals for Juve in like 3 years.
Yeah, he scored 101 or 117. I don't remember the exact amount in 137 games. A lot of those were penalties. But yeah, I mean, he scores goals. He knows how to be in a dangerous position. He's obviously a really good player, so I have to give him a shout out. Back on to the next one. I feel bad for anybody who's a Manchester United fan that might plug into Serie A. We're going over to Manchester. There have been some rumors. Obviously, Manchester United have struggled to start the season. In the summertime, Ten Hag was possibly leaving. Since he's been struggling, they're looking to possibly sack him. And the rumors that I'm seeing all over the Twitter sphere is that Max Allegri is going to be the replacement. Oh my goodness. Xerxes' career's over. Højlund's career's over if Max Allegri comes. So many players. Antony's career's over. Not that these players were doing anything as under Ten Hag, but he will ruin players.
No, this is like classic Man U dumpster fire. Let's go get Allegri. Like that's gonna solve the issues. Like Allegri's time is over. Like he's like the Mourinho era people, like defense first, be terrible. And Ten Hag's been terrible too, but Allegri is not the solution. Go get Ole Gunnar Solskjaer back before you do anything. And I do just want to say how crazy it is, like how Ten Hag continues to just like justify that they're like being shit. Like he came out and said today, nothing to panic about. Like, oh, this stuff. Like, dude, your jaw's on the line. Like, you suck. You've been there for years and you guys still suck. I don't know how he's still there. Like,
you know, what's also funny with Ten Hag is that he's bought in like 5 players on that Ajax team that he brought to like the semifinals of the Champions League. Like when I was a senior in college, like 5-6 years ago, and they just stink on Manchester United. Like he's just like, give me another player from that team and I'll show you what I could do. So they go get him another one, and then they don't win still.
Yeah, there's just no excuse at this point. Like they're giving him every player that he wants, and they're still not getting any better. It's clearly him. He needs to get out. Allegri's not the solution.
It might not be him though, because ever since Sir Alex Ferguson left, no one can figure it out. There, Mourinho was the only one that kind of got close. But yeah, this obviously isn't a Premier League podcast, so we'll move on from Manchester United.
Good quote. The best thing Mourinho, he said, Jose Mourinho said this. His greatest achievement ever as a manager was finishing 2nd place with Manchester United. That's a good one. I like that
one. He won the treble with Inter. Obviously, wins a trophy everywhere he goes, and he brags about what coming in 2nd with Manchester United. But moving on to Italy.
Former Juve stuff on here, actually. Now that I'm reading this.
Yeah, obviously. Well, that's because I picked a lot of the quick shouts. But Buffon got married over the past weekend, and the legendary his front line BBC Barzagli, Bonucci, Chiellini, not to be confused for a different BBC. Wink, wink.
I thought it was Bale, Benzema, Ronaldo was what you're doing.
No. Barzagli, Bonucci, Chiellini at the wedding celebrating their goalie Buffon getting married. Pretty late in Buffon's life to get married, but he was obviously just married to the game.
Definitely married to the game. It's very much a shame that he never won a Champions League. Came
Yeah,
very close.
came close
He had a
twice.
really bad Champions League final one year.
I mean, when you go up against the Ronaldo, Bale, and Benzema, Real Madrid, and the Messi, Neymar, Suarez,
Yeah.
Barcelona,
It is unfortunate.
it's
It's
just
very
tough.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
And the other thing I do want to say is people always forget Barzagli was very good. He wasn't as good as the other two, but also very good, legendary Italian player.
Yes, so that's why he was invited to the wedding.
Yeah, true.
Moving on, Scott McTominay was making news. I guess he had an interview. I don't know with who, but he was making comments about the Serie A. He made two comments that I thought were pretty eye-opening and wanted to give him a shout out. He said that a lot of the Serie A teams have extremely high quality, including the lower level teams, and he wasn't able to see that in the Premier League. So maybe that should open up the eyes of England players and England supporters and Premier League supporters that it's not all about the Prem, and these other leagues are just as good, if not better, than the Prem. They just don't have the same marketing.
I agree. We've been saying it. That's why we're here. That's why we're one of the only podcasts that actually covers all of Serie A. I think we're actually one of like 2 or 3 that do. And we look more like game tape, player reviews and things like that. And it's just not a market yet that everybody's tapping into. And like it's time. Like the Premier League is oversaturated at this point, and it's not a great product a lot of the time. It's Manchester City, Liverpool just rolling teams the entire year, Arsenal rolling teams. And that players don't get that here.
Players running like dogs.
Yeah.
Serie A is more tactically set. Also, he said Lukaku is the most physical player he's ever played with, and Kvara is the most technically gifted player he's ever played with. And once again, this is a guy who's been around the Premier League, he's made a bunch of stops, so he's played with some high-level players in the Premier League, and he's been with Kvara for 2 weeks, and he's saying Kvara is the most technically gifted player he's ever played with.
I just got him on my Ultimate Team. I was so excited.
Oh, you got the new FIFA?
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that yet. Trying to hold off.
Yeah, bit the bullet.
Last quick shout, and this just goes to hand in hand with Scott, with our boy Scott, new friend of the pod, Scott. The number of winless teams in the Serie A, only 1. The number of winless teams in the EPL, 5. So, and I'll even take it a step further. If you look at all the other leagues, if you look at like the top 4, everybody who like should be in the top 4 is the top 4. Like it's clearly in the German league, it's clearly Bayern and Leverkusen, right, in Dortmund. Premier League, it's City, Liverpool, Arsenal. Liga 1, you got PSG at the top. And then you look at the Serie A, and it's 6 different leaders, 6 different weeks. It's Udinese one week, it's Torino the next. It's all over the place. And that just goes to show like how competitive this league is.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Right? I mean, we were talking about it on last week's episode when we did the table. There's only a couple of points basically between the entire table. Like from top to bottom, it's very tight. I expect it to kind of be like this unless Inter turns things around, which it doesn't seem like that's going to happen at this point. It's probably going to be tight for the rest of the year. And then we're going to be sitting here a year from now. We're going to be doing the previews ahead of the August start next year. We're going to be saying the same thing. We don't know who's going to win this year. It's really up in the air.
Yeah, and we have a segment coming later, everyone's favorite, which we'll get into this a little bit more. But from week to week, you just have no idea what is going to happen in the games. Like you can see Monza tie Inter and then lose to Lecce. You can see Inter tie Genoa and then beat Atalanta 4-0. So you really have no idea what's going to happen, and it just goes for great games week in and week out.
Makes for very, very bad culpies, though.
Terrible culpies.
Really tough culpies.
Makes it hard on us, too, to pick the culpies, which obviously makes them bad.
Yeah, it's very tough culpies. Good odds on the culpies, though, a lot of the time. But that wraps up quick shouts. I think we can go straight into this. No break here. We're just going to roll. Champions League on this week. We've had 2 really good match days. From an Italian perspective, I would say it went pretty well for a couple of days here. Today, we had Atalanta play and we had Juventus play. Very good games, both of those. So we're kicking off with Atalanta here. They hosted Shakhtar Donetsk. They won that game 3-0 and really just dominated it from start to finish. There was a couple points that we wanted to pull out here. The first one, shout out Raul Bellanova, first goal for Atalanta and also first Champions League goal. I'm really happy about that one because I've obviously watched a lot of Atalanta and they're the team that I'm backing. And I don't think they have fully integrated him. We haven't seen the best Bellanova is my point yet. Like we knew the best Bellanova we saw the first couple games for Torino this year. He hasn't hit that level yet. I think that's more figuring out how to play with for Gasparini because it isn't the easiest thing. And as Bellanova gets better, I expect the team to get better. They've gotten away from kind of what made them really effective is their wingback play, I would say, was a very big part of why Gasparini has been successful. And they've gone away from that a little bit. I think as Bellanova gets better, and Ruggeri especially has been very good on the left side. I think he's been better than Bellanova. I think they could hit another level if they do go more into the wingbacks, but that's just something I had noticed during the game in the last
Yeah,
couple of weeks too.
yeah, I would agree there. You'd also Atalanta somewhat started slow in the domestically in the Serie A just because of their all those new players learning that system. But what I will say is that Gasparini in his career has almost always had a little bit more success in European football than in the Serie A. He obviously has large success in the Serie A, but I mean, he's been to the semifinals with Atalanta before. He won the Europa League last year. So I just think his kind of style of play, that constant pressure, that man-to-man marking all over the pitch just plays a little bit better in European football just because they're not used to it. And in the Serie A, obviously, you're playing the same teams each year, each game, each week, week in and week out. But good for Bellanova. This is why he did want to make the jump to Atalanta to play European football. So great that he's getting on the score sheet in a Champions League game in his first one.
Quick question for you before we keep rolling with this, because this is something I don't think that we've talked about. I've talked about it with Logue, so I know where he falls on this. And I think this is a pretty divisive topic, depending on who you're talking to. Are you more concerned with winning your domestic title or the Champions League? For me, it's
That's
domestic title. I think that is the most important trophy to win. Everything else is a bonus.
that is such a good question. I mean, because it's so hard to answer. For Italian teams, it's 100% domestic. It is the Serie A. It's not the Champions League, and I think we've seen that over the past 10 years. It's been all
Yeah.
about they haven't had too much success until recently in European football. I've known managers like Conte a lot of times will punt the Champions League, like Juventus did that way back when, in like I think it was 2012, because they had a chance to set the record for the most amount of points in the league ever at 102. And they had the Champions League, and he was like, fuck the Champions League. I want the points. But there's been a switch recently, and I think that's pretty, like you can see that because of how much they are trying European football, that they're now, all these teams are trying to go win European trophies. But I would say for this league, it's going to be the domestic cup. So the Scudetto. I would say for like Spain, it's probably the Champions League.
If you're asking Real Madrid, it is. I mean, Logues falls on the champ. He wants to win the Champions League. That's because he's like a legacy Real Madrid fan, really, is I think where that comes from. What about for you? Not for the league. For the league, I would agree. The Scudetto is the most important thing. What do you think?
For me, I mean, I'm a little biased because I've seen Juventus win like
Yeah,
9 in
that's
a
true.
row. So I want the Champions League more than anything. But because also Juventus have struggled a lot lately in the league, I would love to see a Scudetto win. I personally think it's the league, but I totally understand why people say and think the Champions League because it's the best teams in the best league playing head to head. But I would go with the league trophy.
We'll have to put a poll out there because I'm interested. Well, let us know what you guys think about that one. But let's keep going to Atalanta here. Sorry for the little interruption there. You had a nice stat on a guy that didn't start the season, given a lot of transfer news, but he's now burst onto the scene, starting every game, really getting him rolling is a big thing for Atalanta.
Yes, and that is Lookman, 5 goals and 5 assists. Or no, I apologize. 5 goal and assist contributions in the last 5 games. He's flying out of the gates since starting off, since missing the first couple games. He's really justifying how he was kind of trying to push himself out the door. And the more he plays like that, the more I think the harder it's going to be for Atalanta to hold on to him, either come this winter or this summer, which would stink because he's obviously a great player for Atalanta and a great player in the Serie A. The one thing I'll say about Lookman, and I guess it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day he does score, but he's a little bit selfish. Like
Yeah, he is.
always look to score rather than to play the easy cross or the easy pass across goal for the tap in.
Yeah. That he is for sure. I think part of the issue is that, and he is very good. He plays a lot more central than I think like his skill set is designed for. Like on another team, you just put him at left wing, and I think you'd actually be more effective there. But obviously, like for obviously reasons, they don't do that at Atalanta. At PSG, that's probably what he would have done.
I mean, we've seen him struggle before coming to Atalanta, so it's interesting because Gasperini gives him that freedom. So that's, and I know we've talked about it a little bit, but like that's why I would be, if I'm Lookman, I'd be a little hesitant to move because I work so well under Gasperini and I haven't in other places. But it also makes sense why he wants to, because if you can go to PSG or Arsenal or some other team and get more money for a bigger club, it makes sense. But
PSG's fake news, though. You shouldn't be going there.
agreed.
And last point on this game that we did want to pull out, Samardzic seems to have been fully integrated at this point. Couple starts in a row now, and he is rolling. He didn't quite get man of the match in this game, but just like looking at the match ratings, it was Lookman with an 8.4, Samardzic with an 8.3. That's just wanted to pull out, like, just watch this guy. He's rolling now. He's a very good player. Another Serbian guy, which I for some reason, I thought he wasn't Serbian.
Serb. Yeah, he's
There's a
Serbian.
ton of them out there.
Lot of Serbs in the Serie A.
Yeah, a lot of Serbs, a lot of good Serbs in Serie A too. And to move it on to a Serb that had a phenomenal day today. This was probably the game of the season so far for me across all competitions. Juventus at Leipzig. Juve squeaked this one out 3-2. There was a lot of controversy. A Juve penalty that probably we think it should have been a penalty. I don't know how it wasn't. Didn't get called. There was a red card, penalty kick off of some craziness. But ultimately, Juve went down, and then they battled back, went down a man, continued to battle, won the game. This was the first big challenge, I think, for Juve, where they faced a lot of adversity, obviously, with a couple of goals they let in. But beyond that, Dusan Vlahovic with 2 goals. Massive.
Correct. Yeah, and the second goal I'll talk about first was in a massive moment because it was right after the red card for Juve's goalie Di Gregorio got sent off and a PK. So that Juve went down 2-1 and down a man. So at that point you're thinking, oh man, like hopefully we can get a tie and then get out of Leipzig with a point. A minute later, Vlahovic hits a screamer from outside the box. Amazing goal, which goes to what I said last episode. He's a highlight reel when he wants to be, but he can't do the fundamentals. I thought today he actually did pretty well with the fundamentals, but typically you're not going to see that. But it was a great goal. And even the first goal, he ran across front post and hit a beautiful one-time finish in the direct right-hand corner of the goal. Goalie had no chance to save it. Great game out of Dusan Vlahovic. If he doesn't score that second goal, I doubt we end up winning this game because it gave us momentum. It gave us belief that we can win this game. But to kind of further the turmoil that Juventus had against us in this game, right? We had the ref not on our sides. We also in the first 10 minutes, Juventus had to sub off Bremer, which is due to a potential ACL injury. Not much has been reported on it. They're going to do tests tonight, but that would be a huge loss especially if it's an ACL. And then 4 minutes later, Nico Gonzalez also goes down with what looked like a quad injury as well.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about these one at a time kind of thing, right? Because Bremer going down, I think, is more significant than Nico Gonzalez, although I think Nico Gonzalez is a big loss as well. Because we don't know yet. He might be done for the season for all we know, right? Like the issue I have, and this one is a bigger deal because it's who becomes a center back partner in it. I'll leave it up to you, but my guess is it's Kalulu right now.
Yeah, so in the game, what happened was they subbed Gatti on and pushed Kalulu to left center back, and Kalulu actually balled out. Like Dusan probably got man of the match because he scored 2 goals, but if it wasn't going to be Dusan, it would have probably been Kalulu. He actually ended up saving 2 goals in stoppage time to keep the win for Juventus. He played extremely well. However, he's obviously not left-footed. He's more used to like a right back / right center back role, so that's a pretty big switch. Juventus did buy Juan Cabal in the
That's
summer who
true.
is a
I
left-footed
forgot. Why
center
hasn't
back.
he been playing?
I don't know. He hasn't played at all since like the first 2 games, which he was playing extremely well in. So it's interesting. I don't know why. And then also you have Danilo, who also is not a left center back, but played a lot of left center back under Allegri. So you have some options with Kalulu, Cabal, and Danilo, but I think for the most part, you'll probably see either Kalulu or Cabal there with Gatti on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I would say that makes the most sense. I think Cabal is going to be a long-term better left center back than Kalulu. I saw Kalulu play a lot of center back with Milan. Part of the issue is that he's a little bit undersized, but he's very athletic. So when you partner him with like a guy like Gatti as like Kalulu's like your cover guy, it works really well. It'll be interesting. I would like to see more Juan Cabal. I thought it was phenomenal to start the year. I think he was unlucky in that Cambiaso became the
Mhm.
left back, right? And Mata is clearly more comfortable with Cambiaso off the left rather than where he started off the right. And it sucks for
Cabal, because you don't want to
Cabal.
pair, you don't want to put Cabal there, who also is known for getting up, going up top, like putting in those crosses, and then you have both Cambiaso and Cabal doing it, and now you only have two in the back. So that's probably one of the reasons why. But now with Bremer potentially being out for the season, hopefully it's not. Do think we'll see a lot of Cabal, a lot of shuffling around in the back line for sure now.
Yeah, I
But
guess one thing they could do is just play Cabal, Gatti, Kalulu, and just kind of do like a makeshift in
mm,
possession, like back three kind of thing. And it would work actually really well.
yeah, I mean, that's what they're
Yeah.
doing right now is a makeshift back three in possession with Bremer at the left center back, Gatti at the center back, and or Kalulu, and then Savona or Gatti at the right
Yeah, it's
center
just
back
such a major loss because Bremer was like obviously early season, but like team of the season candidate immediately with how good he's been.
for sure. But I mean, even so, now switch kind of turning the page to Nico Gonzalez. His injury is big too because he was also kind of that supposed to be that potential backup for Dusan in terms of a fake false number 9 when he's in, because Milik also just came out today that he's getting another surgery, so he's gone for another at least month to 2 months. So Nico Gonzalez, depending on how long that injury is, now you do not have a backup for Dusan. You might have to start putting maybe Yildiz at
Yeah, I
striker and
think that
having
would
him
be
play
the
as a
only
false
guy. Yeah,
9.
because it's not Weah. Like Weah is not a number 9.
They tried him
Yeah.
the other day against Napoli, and he was like literally playing as a center mid. But
So I
hopefully
mean,
the
this is a two thing because we have Nico going down and then Milik out. Could this Dusan performance be a little bit pressure's off now? Nico goes down. Now I can do my thing and ball out.
I don't think it's that. I think it's a matter of 3 games a week. Dusan Vlahovic can't play every single game, every single minute of every single game. He needs to come out. And when he needs to come out and when he needs to rest, who do you start there? I don't know.
I think it has to be Yildiz.
Right? Yeah. And then you put Mbu Bang. I always mess up his
Bangula.
name. Bangula on the left, who had a great start to the season, but just can't get in now because of the depth that Juventus has in the midfield and Yildiz and Nico Gonzalez and so on and so forth. But Monda's going to have to play around with it. I trust in him, which is just another thing, just before we move on to the last topic of this game, is that if this happened last year to a Max Allegri Juventus, oh my God, Allegri would have no idea what to do. He would have parked the absolute bus and said, let's just get out of here with a 2-1 loss. Mater, what he did, he subbed Savona out, subbed Douglas Luiz on, moved McKennie to right center back, and was like, this is how we can still defend because McKennie is a versatile player and still go up and attack and get forward and try to score a goal and win this game, which I thought was a genius move.
Definitely. And the last thing I will say about Nico Gonzalez, the guy that he was like competing for on that right-hand side was Concha, who comes on late in the game, scores the game winner off of like individual brilliance. I think he megged a guy in the box and then
Yeah,
put it away.
he came on early because Nico got hurt, but he had a tough start to the first half. He really came on in the second half to like grew into the game. But another guy that came on in the second half who it's starting to become a theme now, which is one thing we wanted to highlight and talk about really quick, is Douglas Luiz has only gotten one start in his Juventus career so far. Typically is a player who comes on in the 70th minute, 65th minute to kind of see the game out, which is a very valuable player to have, but not for a guy who you spent 50 million for in the summertime, who's on a very, very high salary, one of the highest on the teams. And somebody that I think when the Juventus fans heard that he was potentially being brought in and being bought, was going to be a starter game in and game out, almost play 90 minutes every game. So I wanted to kind of talk about that for a little bit and why we think Douglas Luiz hasn't been playing and hasn't been starting.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know, because coming into this game, I actually thought that Fajoli hasn't been great for a lot of the season. I thought he's been okay, not bad, but okay. Same thing with Locatelli. Locatelli's been better than Fajoli, I think. And those are really the guys that I would be looking for him to come in for, because Koopmeiners is going to be that forward
Of time, yeah.
midfielder at this point.
But even Wes McKennie's playing over
Wes
Douglas
McKennie
Luiz.
played phenomenal this game too, I will say.
I
So
thought Fajoli played great today too.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Fajoli coming out was Douglas Luiz's best way into the team for me. And Mata clearly likes Fajoli, Locatelli, and McKennie. And then the other issue now is Douglas Luiz came in and played poorly. Not beyond the handball. Like, the handball was not his fault, really. I would say it was kind of unlucky. It was after that he just didn't play well.
He was giving the ball away. Yeah, he didn't play well at all.
And we had seen him play very well, and it was a question of, oh, why isn't he playing? But at the same time, like, Kefren Turam hasn't really been playing, and he's played phenomenally. Obviously, he did have a couple, like, knocks, but, like, he's healed from that. So maybe he's just waiting for the right time to rotate the squad, because he knows I've never managed in 3 competitions before. Thiago Motta I'm talking about now. And I was worried about this game. I thought they game planned poorly at the beginning of it, and they kind of figured it out mid-game. So maybe he's holding back a little bit, knowing this is a long season. We have a lot of games to play. Douglas Luiz is going to be important maybe a month from now, maybe 2 months from now, and we are still getting him to learn the system a little bit. I don't know. That's my guess.
I think that's a good guess. I think that's part of it. I also think Douglas Luiz played 3,000 minutes last year and also played the Copa America. So try to get him as much rest as possible early on. That paired with Juventus's midfield is a strong midfield with a lot of guys. That is going to be, you're not going to have a consistent player playing every single game except for Koopmeiners, I think. Because Douglas Luiz, Locatelli, Thuram, McKennie, those are all solid players, and you can only play 2 of them if you're going to have Koopmeiners in as well. So there's going to be a lot of rotation there, which I think, but I would have loved to have seen him more than we have so far. And I think my only other thing to say and why I think it is maybe it's because he holds on to the ball a little too long and likes to dribble, but so does Fajoli. So I don't think that that's what it is, but it'll be interesting to see and something for us to keep an eye on as the season progresses.
Definitely. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one. And Juventus in general, we're going to continue to see what they can do this year. But moving it on, Bologna went to Liverpool. More of the same for Bologna. 2-0 loss. I wouldn't read too much into this. Liverpool is one of the best teams in the world. Bologna just isn't at that level yet in terms of play style, players. Italiano project still ongoing, so we're not going to spend a ton of time here. Inter Milan hosted Crvena Zvezda. I think I pronounced that almost wrong. Definitely wrong. They won that game 4-0. Again, this was a demolition at home. So there's not too much to talk about on Inter. We do want to spend more time on them next week because we have been getting away from them a little bit in terms of like Inter winning games. No updates. So we'll spend some time on them on Monday. But a couple important notes to pick out of this game. Mehdi Taremi actually got man of the match, which was interesting to see. I'm still a big fan of his. I don't think he's played as much as I would have liked already with how Lautaro started. And this is on the back of now Lautaro is now rolling. So I think he's going to get less time. Lautaro scored in this game again now. So it's been like slowly inching forward, Inter becoming Inter of last year, right? Like where they're rolling, getting all the guys going. It was Thuram. Now it seems Lautaro's catching up. The back line is getting better. They're improving week in and week out. And Denzel Dumfries hasn't really been playing a lot either.
You keep saying that. I keep saying that it's not the same as last year. They're a year older. It's not going to be the same. We'll have to wait to see to find out what happens. Other important part about this game was Hakan Çalhanoğlu hit a nasty free kick across the goalie's face. First free kick goal for Inter in the Champions League since Wesley Sneijder in 2010. Hakan Çalhanoğlu is a world-class player. If you don't know who he is, watch him. He can make any pass. He can score any goal. He's a great, great player.
Yeah, he's definitely one you have to just watch. He's not going to jump out on the screen really, but you got to watch him and you'll see what he can do.
And then before we move on, I wanted to say something. You know how we kind of struggle on some pronunciations? I was watching CBS today and this is with the AA team.
The AA
It's
team, yeah.
Kate Abdo, who she now goes by Kate Scott. Super annoying that she changed her name, but it is what it is. Terry, obviously everyone knows what I'm talking about. Micah and Jamie Carragher, like, get pronunciations wrong on purpose and, like, laugh about it. Like, they don't give a shit that they're getting stuff
No,
wrong.
they only can say, like, English team players. That's it.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
all they can
But
say, yeah.
they had, who's that player on Villa that's been
John Duran, yeah.
They had him on today, and Thierry Henry just broke out his Spanish and was just ripping Spanish to him and then Jamie and Micah are, like, getting the, like,
Google Translate. They're literally Google Translate.
But they can't pronounce Taremi's name correct. It makes no sense.
Yeah, Calcio boys are still out there for B team. Couple other games going on for Italian teams in Europe. Tomorrow, Roma are going to Elfsborg. We got eyes on this one. Not really much else to say other than we talked about on Monday. The other game going on, Conference League. Fiorentina hosting New Saints. And if you've been paying attention, we did not talk about Milan at Leverkusen yet. That is because we're bunching these together into our match preview because Milan is going to Fiorentina this weekend, and this is one of the games we wanted to preview. So to start with, Fiorentina is playing tomorrow. That is a short turnaround time from a European game straight into the Serie A. That's an advantage Milan on its own, regardless of what happens in that game for Fiorentina. Because we were saying on Monday how important it is for Fiorentina to win this game. So they're not going to be benching anybody, no resting. So that's significant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the one silver lining, and obviously this is the case, is it's in Florence, so they don't necessarily have to travel at all, right? And they'll still be in their homes. But it's still, I mean, we saw the effect that it had on Inter after a City game with Milan having the extra day rest. Now Milan have extra 2 days rest. Milan also have a deeper squad in and of itself, more talented players as well. So the odds right now are probably stacked against Fiorentina, even though they're at home because they're only getting a couple of days rest. Well, Milan's game was on Tuesday, so Milan's going to be basically fully rested.
I'm getting pelted by this glare from the sun right now. But on the Milan side of things, they went to Leverkusen and lost that game 1-0. I don't think there's going to be a lot of negative takeaways from it. They played okay, I guess, and Leverkusen kind of played okay, was my big takeaway. They didn't do anything exceptionally well. Neither did really Leverkusen. There was a couple chances for both teams. It really could have gone either way. It probably deserved to be a draw. Fofana kind of fucked something up at the end of the game and should have scored on a Morata deflection, sort of, and he thought he was offsides and didn't make a play on the ball. But what I will say, for Milan players, they have to be a little bit mentally drained, I think, because it's not like they played a lot of big games in terms of opposition, but the meaningfulness, if that's not the correct word, but the stakes now are higher every game because of how they have started the season. And they need, I think players now are feeling like, okay, we have to win. Like we lost at the beginning of the season, we're dropping points. They go to Leverkusen. You have to get fired up to play that game. And now you got to go, okay, but now we have to play Fiorentina in the league. In a normal season, this isn't that big a deal, but we need to win now.
Yeah, but you're also forgetting that Milan are off 3 straight wins in the league. They are right there. I think they're third on the table, second on the table. So they're right there. I think that this for both teams going into this game, Fiorentina and Milan, you have to look at that as we both need wins, right? Fiorentina, if you get a draw at home and you're only on 7 points, you'd be at 8. That's not great. Milan, you would be kind of back to where you were before the Inter game if you lose this game or even tie this game. It's like Fonseca on the hot seat again, even though I won't think that, but I think the Italian media will say stuff.
I'm still there with Fonseca, honestly. And I think that it's partially he needs a win to get like that monkey off his back because it's a couple games in a row good, but you started bad. But I haven't seen enough from this Milan team to say they're out of the rut that they were in, I guess, is how I'm looking at it still.
I agree. I'm in agreement. I'm just like I said last episode, and I'm taking my advice. I'm zooming out and not calling for managers' heads within 10 games of the season. But there's a lot of pressure on Milan because you cannot continue to drop games and drop points. And you kind of figured it out in terms of in the league, right? When you beat Inter, beat Lecce, you have to beat Venezia. It's like you want to keep that momentum going. The Champions League results are not coming. I will say you definitely had a tough go in the first two games with drawing Liverpool and Leverkusen back to back. I think that now that probably there'll be easier games down the road in the Champions League, so you can start getting results there. But it's going to be an important game, this one against Fiorentina, and we'll have to see if they can get it done.
Yeah, and to your point about what you said, for each team, a good result in their mind is a win. So it should be actually a very interesting game because I think both teams will feel they can win this game. Fiorentina definitely thinks they're as good as Milan right now. Milan still should have the swagger to say we're better than Fiorentina realistically. But there is one guy, we actually haven't talked about him a whole lot this year yet, and that's Rafael Leao. As much as we've talked about Fonseca and everything he's doing wrong, we do need to take a step back. Things are kind of righted in the last couple of weeks. For Rafael Leao, they haven't really. And this is something that we've talked about a lot for the last couple of years, even before we started recording the podcast or anything. And it's the inconsistency of Rafael Leao is what has held him back. And you can see game moments, I guess, is the way you can describe him. He's great in moments, but sometimes those moments are 3 games in between or 4 games in between or a month in between. Or sometimes they'll go 3 games in a row where he just takes over the game for 30 seconds, he scores, and then you never see him again. And that's what Rafael Leao is, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but those 30 seconds that he takes over the game is such individual brilliance that it's like a holy shit moment. But then for the other 89 minutes and 30 seconds, he doesn't do a whole lot, which you guys have been preaching that for a couple years now. I've always been on the train that I really like Leao. However, I haven't watched as many Milan games as you and Logs, obviously. And this year I've been watching more and more. He has a terrible attitude on the pitch. Like if things don't go his way, he has really bad body language. He starts to get upset at his teammates. If he gets subbed out if he doesn't play the full 90, he's always upset. He's always mad. He's always like shrugging off the coach, which is just terrible from one of your best
and quote unquote leaders.
He was wearing the captain band.
Yeah.
He was wearing the captain armband. One of those, I think against Lecce, but it's not good to see because if your leader's doing that, it's going to allow the last guy on the bench to think he can do that as well. And I'd also say and this would be on Fonseca, you have to put him in his place and show listen, you're not playing well right now. Pulisic shouldn't be the one coming off in the 70th minute. He's flying high. He's scoring the goals, providing the assists. You're going to be subbed out, and we're going to move Pulisic over to his natural position, which is a left wing. And I don't know if he's going to do that. I don't know if there's a agreement in Leao's contract where he needs to play 90 minutes in a percentage of games. But Leao gets real lazy out there. He gets real lackadaisical. He has real bad body language, and it doesn't help that the guy behind him is a very similar player in that he can also have bad body language and be real. He's not lackadaisical out there. He could just have bad body language, and that's T.O.
Yeah, and he can be idiotic in his own right, where he'll just kind of switch off. And with Leao, I kind of compare him across the league. I look at who are the best players in the league because that's who we compare Leao to. I'm not even sure he deserves that comparison right now, realistically, because we judge Leao off of these moments that he can have. And I kind of compare him to Kvaratskhelia as not in terms of how they play, but importance to their team, profile in the league, ceilings, that sort of thing, price tag. And Kvaratskelia's attitude is incredible. He makes his team better, and he doesn't have moments. He just plays well every single game, and teams have to game plan for him. And that's because he works really hard every game. And he gets the ball and he's like, we need to score now every time. And Leao doesn't really have that. And I don't know if it's an attitude switch or what he can do, but this is what I've always said about Leao. I don't think I said we should have sold him when we had that 100 million on the table because he's not worth it. Because it's these moments, and you need a player of consistency for that price tag. So that's all I'll say about Leao.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see going forward. We were saying the same thing, especially me, earlier on in the season about Teo, and he's kind of figured it out. He scored 2 goals. He's been wearing the captain armband. He's been showing that kind of grinka, that grink that we all love to see. But I don't know if we're gonna ever see it from Leao. He's also and we knew that this was gonna happen with kind of the way that Fonseca likes to play and with Morata, is that Leao is gonna have to score more goals and take more shots. Leao's been shooting it from outside the box, and these goals or these shots come nowhere
Terrible,
close to the
terrible.
goal. And then he gets all upset. It's like, who are you upset about? You're the one taking that shot that goes to row Z, goes outside the San Siro. So it'll be
Work on it or
interesting to
training
see.
or stop doing it. Like, you're not good at it, don't do it. Like, keep the ball at that point.
Yeah,
Give
and
it to
also
Taylor.
if you're gonna say something in the media like I want to press, I want to sacrifice, then you have to do that. You can't just lose the
Yeah,
ball and then walk around and get upset that you lost the ball.
definitely. So this will be an interesting game. The other one we're going to be highlighting here, I'm very excited about this game because I love Torino. Torino's going back to the San Siro. Earlier in the year, they played Milan there and probably should have won. They ended up drawing that game. They're playing Inter Milan. Big game for both teams. We're more so talking about the Inter perspective for this game because I think this is what I think. If Torino lose this game, it's not that big a deal. If they get a result, they're going to be happy with it. If they get a win, exceptional. So we're going to kind of steer away from that. With as good as Torino have been, they could definitely get a result. No expectation on them. I don't think there's too much to read into. I'm assuming they're going to try to play the way they've been playing, which is dominate the ball and do that sort of thing and kill the game. So we're going to talk about more from an Inter perspective because it's been an interesting year so far. They obviously haven't hit the heights they wanted. So there's a couple things we did want to discuss here, Mats. The first thing is, do we think Inzaghi is going to go back to what he's sort of been doing in the league and just rolling the 11 from last year? We saw today, or was this yesterday in the Champions League, he did play Zielinski, which is a little bit of a change, and Carlos Augusto again. So we saw a little bit of change in the Champions League. I think Augusto played against City as well. So a little
Augusto
bit
got
different
subbed
there.
in against
Yeah.
City. I think Inzaghi's gonna go back to what he's been doing in the league, and that is playing that exact 11 that he was playing last year with a couple changes. I don't know who. Maybe it's either Darmian or Dumfries at that right wing back spot, and it's either Bissek or Pavard. That's really the only switch changes that he really makes consistently. But I think that we're going to see Mkhitaryan at that left center mid spot. And listen, Mkhitaryan had a fantastic year last year, but this is another year older. Him playing more minutes, more games. I think he's 35 now. It gets to a point where he needs to be the sub, and Zielinski needs to be the guy playing every single game in and game out, right? I think that it would be smart to play Taremi after he just got a man of the match in the Champions League game, granted against a lesser opponent. But Thuram's already in form. You want to get Lautaro kind of continuing to score goals, and a good partnership would be Lautaro and Taremi. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think we're going to see the same 11, Lautaro and Thuram up front, DeMarco at the left wing back, Mkhitaryan at left center mid, Hakan, Barella, Darmian, Pavard, Acerbi, and Bastoni, and Jan Summers. And Inter's the oldest team in the league. You need to rotate these guys. That's why you went out and got a backup goalie. You went out and got Zielinski. You went out and got Taremi. You have Carlos Augusto. You need to rotate these players in order to keep them fresh. And not to mention, they also had, and I don't know why they did this, but they had like the most intense preseason ever. They went to they went somewhere like far away. They didn't stay in Italy. They played tough games. So that all these guys are tired and they're not rotating. And I think it's going to roll out the same 11. What do you think?
He's going to roll off the same 11. The last year's 11, he's definitely going to. I'm crying out for it. I know that you said they can't do it. I try Frattesi and Barella again. I know they can't do it. But Frattesi's so young and like malleable and is changing before our eyes. Like, get him in there. Like, Frattesi deserves playing time.
You know who has done it? Is Spalletti. Spalletti's played them both at the same time.
Yeah.
And it worked. I said Inter won't do it and Inzaghi won't, but Spalletti has, and it did work because Fortezzi does score a lot for the national team. Although this last break, obviously Barella wasn't there, but in the Euros, they definitely did play together.
So I would like to see that. We're going to see Thuram and Lautaro, without a doubt. And I think we might even see Darmian more than Dumfries. I don't know why that's going on. I think it's partially the contract issue with Dumfries, and they don't know what's going to happen. But
I
that
thought he
one's
resigned. Pretty
okay.
sure he resigned for a
Oh,
year.
okay, he did.
I guess he's not fit, but even like you gotta take a tribute out. The man's 36,
Yeah.
but then you move
Dumfries did
past Stone.
play a ton in the last 12 months, though, I will say. So that could be
Mhm.
a piece of that too. And the other thing we did want to talk about, Mats, I know for me, I think this is Inzaghi is fine, super safe. But if Inter lose this game or even drop any points, alarm bells at all for you?
I wouldn't say it's alarm bells for Inzaghi's job, right? Because I agree with you. I think he's safe. But if Inter, let's say they tie this game, they'd be 3-3-1 on the season in 7 games. And last year, I think they tied like 6 games total, and they lost 1 game. So it'd be a much different start to the season this year than last game if they tie. And if they lose, that's obviously even worse because then they're 3-2-2, and they only have 1 win more than draws and losses. So I don't think it's alarm bells for Inzaghi's job per se, but I think it's alarm bells as in, hey, that beautiful calcio that Inzaghi plays, which I do think is beautiful, teams are starting to figure out how to defend it, and not only how to defend it, but how to score goals against it and counter it. Because Inter's also leaking in the back a lot more goals than they conceded last year. And a lot of those goals come late on in the games in the 80th minute, as I mentioned last episode. So it's also alarm bells of where's Inter's concentration at? And also maybe this could go back to that question that you asked earlier in the sode. Is Inter's concentration winning the Scudetto? Or maybe Inzaghi's like, we want Champions League this year. Because Inter, and I know you're playing Manchester City, so you're gonna have your guys hyped and focused for that game. But that game was old Inter. That game was we're sitting in our block and then we're countering and having dangerous opportunities. The only time I've seen that this year is against Atalanta with Inter. So maybe that could be into it, is that because they got their second star, their 20th Scudetto last year, that's what they put all their chips in the table for. Maybe this year it's, hey, we can go get this Champions League, but we have to put all our chips in the Champions League rather than the Serie A.
It could be. Regardless, a thing that we did talk about with Inzaghi is this is a Inzaghi legacy, maybe not legacy because he's still very young, but like heat check, are you one of the best managers in the world? This is your season to show that. And so far this year, he's not showing it, right? Again, we're saying it, take setback, 6 games in. They need to get significantly better for anybody to be discussing Inzaghi as one of the best managers in the world because he's done it a couple years. Should have won 3 Scudettos already, or 2 Scudettos already. Last year was his first one, right? Should have won 2 already. He needs a major trophy this year, and that's not the Coppa Italia. For us to be saying Inzaghi is one of the best coaches in the world, he has to win the Champions League or the Scudetto, period.
Agreed. So here's a question for you. If Inter win one of those 2, is it a failure of a season or is it not a failure of a season?
No, I don't think they're a cool. It's not a failure, and I don't know why.
That's fair. I would agree. I would say it's not a failure. I just think like the Champions League, you cannot go in saying like, if we don't win the Champions League, this season's a failure, and the Scudetto. Like, you don't know what's going to happen in the Champions League. That's anyone's tournament. And even the Scudetto, we just finished saying it, like you don't, week in and week out, everything differs. So you can't go in being like, we need to win both the Champions League and the Scudetto or it's a failure, unless maybe like you're Real Madrid and you're paying these guys $30 million a year, which obviously no one in the Serie A is doing. So I agree with you that it's not a failure, but like I don't have any logical reasons as to
Yeah, I
why.
was like going through it, like, okay, who are the teams that actually saying we need to win both? It's like Manchester City, and that's it.
And Madrid,
Even
probably,
Liverpool
right?
isn't like we need to win the Champions. Like Liverpool wants to win it, either one, they're fine.
It's probably City, Madrid and sometimes Bayern because
And
Bayern
sometimes Bayern. Yeah,
Bayern is
because
so Bayern's
different,
league.
completely different story. Yeah.
But and I would also say that Bayern,
Yeah.
PSG, but Bayern, PSG, and even like Madrid and Barcelona's leagues are so much easier than the Premier League and the Serie A because Bayern or the Bundesliga is a 3-horse race max. Spanish league's 3-horse race max. Liga 1 is a 1-horse race. And then you have the EPL and the Serie A, which is a much more competitive league. So that's why I would say a couple of those teams would say that. But like then you would say if you say that, then every single season for Bayern, PSG, almost every season is a failure because PSG never win the Champions League and Bayern only do it once every like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So to wrap up this conversation, then here's a good segue. If we're saying that Inter need to win one of these, is there a scenario where they move on from Inzaghi at the end of the year?
I think there potentially could be because he was up for a contract extension and they only renewed him till 2026 after the job that he just did. If you were like deadlocked on Inzaghi, you would be like, we're going to keep you to like, I don't know, 2029 or something. I don't think that they should because what Inzaghi's building is very, very good. They're in the middle of that project. All Inter's players are in their prime / like just maybe exiting their prime, but you can get those few spurts of that prime career. So like a Cherby still doing it at 36 and so on and so forth. So I don't think that they should, but you could potentially move on from him or have a justified reason to if he gets nothing but the Coppa Italia.
Yeah, you think so?
I do.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, think about it.
You're a little harsher than I would be, I think, on him.
I just think that like from an Inter standpoint, right? You just won the Scudetto or the league by 19 points. You lose that gap, and then you also don't win the Champions League. I just think that I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think that they should because I like what Inzaghi's doing, and you have to build on that. If you go get a new coach, you probably have to not start from scratch, but
No, yeah, you do. You do fully. I agree. For me, I think it's more if he doesn't finish in a Champions League spot and wins no trophies.
I mean, if he doesn't, that's terrible. If Inter don't finish in the top 4,
I think that's the only scenario where he doesn't come back next year.
That'd be awful. He shouldn't come back next
year. But just to take you guys through the other games happening this weekend, there are some other pretty good games, which is why the Colby was so hard this week. Como's going to Napoli. I'm backing Napoli in this because I'm still not sold on the little lads from the lake. Mots,
yeah,
disagree with that? Come on.
Napoli's my Gumar, but I will say this is definitely a game I will be watching. Como played great soccer. Napoli, obviously Conte, 1 game a week. It'll be a fun game to watch. I would expect a lot of goals in this game.
Venezia going to Verona. This game could either be a 3-0 Verona win or 0-0, and I don't think there's any other result.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Venezia just played Roma amazingly. I
don't get Venezia, dude. They play everybody so well. And then
Milan, they lost to Milan 4-0.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It's just a Serie A.
Yeah, it is. Lecce going to Udinese. I hope I don't know what's going to happen in this game. I have no idea.
You would assume Udinese can get the win, especially at home against Lecce, but like we've been saying all episode, this is the theme of the episode. You really have no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah. In Bergamo, Genoa is going to Atalanta. Just taking a couple minutes to talk about this one. We're considering this a must-win for both teams. Both teams?
I would say Atalanta. It's so tough for Genoa. I mean, if Genoa don't win, they do. They need a result. But Atalanta need a result more because they just lost.
They
just lost to Como and in Bergamo, and what do they have? 7 points right now, so they got to catch the top of the table. Genoa, I would say like they need a win because they started off good, right? Tying Inter. But since then they've kind of just not done a whole lot. And I don't think that's really on their manager, Gilardino. I think he's doing a great job with what he has. Yeah. And I think that's on the directors that kind of screwed him over by saying, we're going to sell Retegui and sell Gudmundsson and then get you nobody in return.
Yeah, they definitely got key pieces like picked apart, and there are not a ton of great guys left over there anymore. for Atalanta, it's like you need to start showing form in the league, period.
Hmm.
Like everybody's on the hot seat. Gasparini's obviously not, but like the team's playing well. Now it's on the players to get results. Retegui hasn't played in a couple games. He hasn't started. So I'd expect him to come off the bench. Sneaky bet for this one is Retegui anytime scorer. I think I'm going to do that one because I think he's due. Moving it on, Thiago Motta's boys, Turin, Juve at home taking on Cagliari. This should be as straightforward as it comes, regardless of how Cagliari has only been a problem when they're at home. This should keep the streak going, right?
Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope Juventus could keep the streak going of in the Serie A. They are one, haven't allowed a goal, and two, they be in every Serie A team either 3-0 or 0-0. And that's what I was gonna say is that Juventus struggle, and I mentioned this last episode, against teams that are gonna set up 11 or 10 men behind the ball. Obviously, that is what is going to happen this game. So I'd like to see what Thiago can do against this squad, because this is a game you should be winning, whether it's 3-0 or 1-0. You need to get all 3 points, especially if you're at home. Probably no Bremer, probably no Nico Gonzalez, so we'll see how the squad looks. But you would assume that this would be a 1-0 win, but because it's Juve, it's probably going to be 3-0 because they either win 3-0 or 0-0.
The no goal stat is so sick. I hope they keep that rolling for a long time because that's a cool thing. Like when you're winning games, not conceding.
6 games, no goals, never been done before in the 3-point era. Like if it wins 3 points, never been done before.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Moving it on to Rome, Lazio hosting Empoli. I'm going to be tuning in for this game. This one could also be a snooze fest, or it could be very interesting. Baroni's Lazio haven't really faced a sit-deep team yet, so I'm interested to see what Baroni can pull together here. For Empoli, I think they're actually at the point now where they're like, we can get a result in every game we play, and I think they're going to try to start getting a little bit more. I think it's just going to be a good matchup. I think Empoli are going to try a little bit harder to get something out of it, but this is more for me. How good is Baroni tactically? This is a good question mark for me on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see just taking a stab at this. I could be so wrong, but I see this game kind of going somewhat similarly to the Empoli-Roma game, because Baroni's Lazio is a lot of times open in the middle because they like to attack on the sidelines, and they're susceptible to they're able to be countered easily. And Empoli is a very good counter-attacking team because they sit so deep. So I could see Empoli doing well here, but Lazio always score a ton of goals, but Empoli don't allow a lot of goals in. So this is going to be one of those games where it's like, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Moving it on to Bologna, they're hosting Parma. This one is also interesting for me because I think Parma are going to love this matchup because they're fine without the ball, and Italiano with the ball has not been very effective, so they're just going to be licking their chops. I think Lookman suspended because he got a straight red. So they're a little bit shaky back there. It's going to be a little bit scary game for Italiano, I think.
Except Parma are frauds, and they're going to go get a red card as well.
Yeah, I don't even think it matters. I think Parma's going to win this game. I really do. In Italiano, it's getting scary over there.
I think Parma will find a way to fuck this game up as they've done.
I think it's going to be like a 2-2 Bologna ties it in the 90th.
Bologna may win. I think Parma are frauds, especially away from home. They're frauds.
All right, cool. Monza, Roma going there. This is odd for Roma because Monza haven't won a game yet, and they are due to win. But I do think Roma are significantly better than them. The other important aspect of this is Roma is playing tomorrow. So short rest, I think it's kind of helpful for Juric. Maybe get more games under the belt. I think practice probably would have been better, but what do you think happens here?
Yeah, this will be interesting. I mean, I guess this is why Roma went out and signed all those players, because now Juric has a lot of depth to shuffle with. Like he's got experienced guys like Hummels and Hermosa to sub in and play in the Champions League game or the Europa League game, who have played in those games before, or even against a lesser opponent like Monza. So I think that those players will come into, they'll be key for this kind of close game, Thursday, Sunday game. if you're Roma, you have to win this game because you've started to right the ship. You've gotten 2 wins in a row under Juric, although the last game was very unconvincing. So I really want to see Roma win convincingly and kind of control this game because I would say Venezia, with the last game, kind of outplayed Roma. And they're still learning Juric's system, so that might happen. But Monza, a winless team, you cannot be the first team to let them get that win on you.
Yeah. Roma should win. They should win. They were very open in the last game against Venezia, though.
Yeah, but Juric isn't an open, like, he's going to figure out what was happening, and he's going to solve those problems because we know he allowed 36 goals in Torino last season. Like, he's always been a compact manager who presses his opponent. So I think that's just a little growing pains for the Roma squad is when they're pressing, they're allowing themselves to be slightly open. So you just got to teach them how to press and still stay compact and closed in. And once they get that, they're going to be hard to break down because they have good defenders. They have good midfielders. And we know Juric is a defensive coach. Like Juric brought up DeMarco at Hellas Verona, Bremer at Torino, Bongiorno at Torino. Like he's had some great players that has come up under him for defenders.
Nesta, you got to get a win at Monza at some point, though, buddy. Like, it's time. It's time. But those are all the games happening this weekend. And with that, we have one more segment for you guys. Everybody's favorite.
Colpi di Luna.
Colpi's back. Colpi's back. We're going to have a good week this week. I got a good feeling.
Colpi is back.
I think this was my hardest decision-making one. It took me a while to pick one.
The Colpi's back. I don't know if that's for better or for worse. We are just struggling. I think so this is going to be the 7th time or the 6th because we missed last week.
Yeah.
I believe you're 2-4, and I believe me and Logs are 1-5. And then I believe the Paisan leg is also 2-4, which is just, I mean, gambling, you're going to, like, good gamblers go like 60%. So we're not doing good, but, you know, it's early. It's early.
As the season goes on, I feel like it should get easier.
I would hope so.
Because the teams, we know what's going to happen. It's a little less chaotic.
We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know what's going to happen. But Logs, as always, is going to be giving us our first Colpi here. Obviously, he's a Conte player, 1 game a week. But he is taking Udinese money line plus 115. Udinese is playing Lecce at home.
I like that bet. You're getting points, or not points, but you're getting value, the plus value, and it's a home team. Udinese was at the top of the table just last week, and Lecce have been a little bit the punching bag. Unless they're at home, they can kind of get a result. I like that. I like that bet a lot from Logs.
Interesting one. Mats, I'll give it to you because you always bet the same team every week.
That's false, but I might start. I'll say this. I bet the same team every single week. I don't always have it as my Colpi leg. And that same team that I bet every single week is Juventus. And I'm actually going to give you Paisano's little secret here. I throw $100 minimum on Juventus every single week. And now they're playing 3 games a week. So I'm basically throwing $300 a week on Juventus. Against, who did we play last week? I forgot who we played last week, but we won 3-0, and I threw $200 on it. Today at Leipzig, I threw $100 on that one.
Sweated it out.
I sweat. I looked when Juventus went down a man, and it was and Dusan tied it up. I looked to see the cash out, and it was like $27, and I was like, should I cash this out? This saves some money, but I was like, no, I'm riding. And then I saw that there was 9 minutes of stoppage time, and I was like, well, they're going to score. And Leipzig should have tied that game. They had like 4 opportunities in the stoppage time to score. But with that said, my Colpi leg is Juve minus 1.5, because if they win, which I do think they should win, they will win. They will win 3-0 because that's what they do. So I would also like to recommend to sprinkle exact score 3-0 Juventus. But my leg is...
Do not put that in the Colpi, though. Definitely.
No. It's not in the Colpi. My Kobe leg is Juve -1.5, and you get that at +116.
Good odds on that one. That should happen. That's a really good Kobe leg. That brings it to me. I was going back and forth on this. I had Napoli -1.5 at one point. I liked that. I still like it, but I'm not going with it because I have to back my boys in Bergamo. Atalanta at home against Genoa. I've got over 2.5 goals in this game. -126. Not a ton of value, but
It's not bad, though.
Atalanta games tend to have 3 goals in them, whether it's Atalanta scoring 2 and conceding 1 or Atalanta scoring 3 and conceding 1. Usually both teams score. Usually it's a lot of goals. It's a goals fest. I'm banking on that continuing. They've been fucking rolling now. They just rolled Shakhtar 3-0. But that brings the Kulpi all together plus 732. You put $100 down, you get $732, and that's before a Paisan leg.
And then you put $100 down separately on Juventus, so you can make some
Then you
money.
sprinkle on Juve 3-0 money line. You're coming out good this weekend.
Yeah, we have to get back in the driver's seat for the Colby, get some check marks on the Colby, get some hits, make some people some money. But like I said, guys, if you want to actually make some money, just bet Juventus $100. And I usually do money line. I typically do money line. However, against the lower level teams, it's not that. Yeah, which is why last week I threw $200 on them, right? Because that now it's a little bit more value.
Juve expert here. I couldn't tell you're a fucking Juve fan for sure. It's really hard to tell.
Yo, you're an Atalanta fan.
I might
no
be
longer a Milan fan.
I love Atalanta.
You were migrating.
Yeah, migrating a couple miles north. Well, with that, guys, we are done with the day. As always, follow us on all our socials at Calcio Culture FC. Thank you for tuning in. If there's anything you want us to talk about, just shoot us a note. Get in touch with us. We want more people to get involved. We've had a couple comments, all positive, but give us a negative if you got it. We're here for anything. Mats, what do you got for the Paisanos?
Piggybacking on that, like, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars. Also, Calcio Culture has changed to being at least 2 of us here, and the 2 of us that are doing this today have switched over to Apple Podcasts. Sound is a little bit more better quality. You get the video with it. So rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts as well. Rate us on Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Instagram. Follow on TikTok at Calcio Culture FC. And as always, Paisanos, do not be a gagoots and Forza Calcio Culture.